let's talk about schedules. I think this is probably one of the most overwhelming parts of homeschooling when you first get going, is deciding how you're going to set up your homeschool day and your year. So let's start with the day. There are kind of two trains of thought with day. You start at a certain time and you kind of have it laid out like a regular school day, like at 8 o'clock we do math, at 9 o'clock we do literature. So you can kind of do a time regulated schedule. Or the other way is to do kind of a when you're ready to start schedule. And by this I mean you wake up, you know, your kids have their morning chores to do or whatever your morning routine is. And then once they're done with that, they're ready to start into school. And this is kind of the method that I use, just because I don't like the stress of having to start at a certain time. But I actually have found that we usually start about the same time, like every day, just because it takes us about the same time. So in some ways it is starting at the same time, but there's just not that stress of the clock ticking and us having to be ready. So we kind of follow that schedule. Now, I have an older son who wakes up earlier than the younger kids, so he kind of gets going on the day before them, which ends up being good because his schooling takes longer than the other kids. So he'll wake up, do his morning chores, and then he'll start into his music practice. And once he's done that, he'll roll into his math lesson, which is great timing for me because I can usually go over the new concept section with him in his math lesson while the other kids are doing their morning chores and music practice. So I can go over that new concept part with him, and then he can kind of work independently on math while I'm starting the other kids on their part of their new concept part of math. As far as my week, what that looks like, I have chosen to do like book academic school 4 days a week. And then on Fridays, we either do like a field trip or a project day, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But on the 4 days of school, every day we do our music practice, we do a devotional, and we do a math lesson, and we do literature. Literature includes like reading, writing, grammar, and spelling, all those things in literature. So we do those every day, and then we alternate every other day with science or history. Each kid obviously does their literature at grade level and their math at grade level, but science and history we do all together. The older kids will do a more detailed research on each science lesson or history lesson. And sometimes it's just research, sometimes it's writing something up or doing an extra experiment. But they'll go into a little more detail while the younger kids kind of take a little break and a little recess from school. So we do those together. So 4 days a week we do like the hardcore subjects, and then Fridays is our project day or our field trip day. And just depends on the season what we do. You know, winter we ski a lot. When it gets warm, we like to go to the beach or hiking or to museums or historical sites. Or the other thing that my kids love is project day, and that's the day that they get to work on anything that they want, uninterrupted. You know, I let them be. And the other days they have things they want to work on, but sometimes I have to pull them away for a little bit just to finish the math lesson or whatever it is. But on project day, they can work and make a mess and just totally get into the flow of their project. And they love it. And they have created some of the most amazing things for project day. They've filmed 3 movies where they made all the props and did all the scenes and made all the costumes and edited the movies, and that was really fun. And they've made remote control boats, and right now my son's working on a remote control airplane, and they've built rockets and like tried to make explosives, and those haven't worked out so great. Not any bad thing, but they've just been able to do what they're interested in. One of my daughters just likes to read on Friday. She just likes to curl up with a book and read, and that's great. And the younger kids just play, you know, Legos or outside in the yard on the swing. They just play on project day. And then finally, what my year looks like is I choose to school year round, but I take vacation whenever we need it or is convenient. And that's great because there's a lot of benefits to be able to go on vacation whenever you want. You know, I guess probably don't have to explain those to you, but you know, cheaper prices and a lot more accessibility to things. So I do year round, and I chose to do that because after 1 year, I decided to take the summer off, and we started school back up in the fall, and I was just amazed at how rusty my kids were on concepts that they really had mastered before we took our break. And so we just kind of keep going very loosely in the summer, but we do kind of try to keep those concepts, especially with math, fresh, and just reading really good books in the summer. We don't do history or science in the summer, so it's a much more laid back schedule, but we just kind of keep those wheels turning a little bit to make it not so frustrating starting up in the fall. But you'll find if you do something like that, that you actually kind of get ahead, and so you can plan it how you want, whatever works for you. As a family, we've figured out that going on vacation at the beginning of September is the best thing ever, because everyone's back in school, you have the world to yourself, everything's cheaper, but the weather is still lovely and everything's open. So we like taking our family vacation then when the world is back to itself. 1 year we took a trip, we did a Civil War trip, and we just ping-ponged up and down the East Coast, checking out all the sites, and we stopped in Washington, D.C. And I used to live in Virginia. We used to live in Virginia, and to go in and see the Constitution at the National Archives was always a line out the door and then zigzag through. And when we went in September, we walked straight up to the Constitution. There was maybe like 5 other people there in the National Archives. It was just amazing. Just feel like you don't spend as much time in lines. But that's a secret. So don't go crowding my vacations. Just kidding. So scheduling. In the end, I just say, do what works for you. What feels comfortable, which causes the least amount of stress. But consistency is helpful. I think just no matter what, your kids like to know what the schedule is, and when it's consistent, they don't complain about having to start school. They just know that's what it's going to be, and you might have to fight it a little bit at first to get that consistency going, but I found that my kids, they just know what we're doing and they're fine with it. So I think consistency is key.